Hey, and welcome back to another video. So in this video, we'll be taking a look at another rare prototype phone. And this phone is the Nokia/Microsoft Lumia VELA Prototype. Now, the Lumia VELA was a phone that was never released to the market in this form. As you can see here, it is an almost borderless design. There's a very slim border at the top and the sides, but the bottom has a chin. However, this was a big deal for its time, which is around 2013 to 2014 when it was being developed. We did get a final version of this phone that was released to the market. However, it was nowhere near as exciting as this phone. And that phone was the Nokia Lumia 435 from 2015. And you must be thinking, what? That's not the same phone. The Lumia 435 is a really boring, low-end Windows phone. And that's correct. You're right there. The Lumia 435, however, was supposed to be a much greater phone with a almost borderless display and a very unique design for the time. However, they decided to cancel that for unknown reasons. I can only speculate, and we'll be talking about the speculations in this video. They canceled it and they went with the old boring design. However, the prototypes are out in the market in the wild. They're not extremely rare, not as rare as my Nokia N8 prototype over there or the Motorola Razr Z12 prototype that I'll be covering in a few weeks, but it is towards the more rarer side. However, it's really nice to see that Nokia/Microsoft was considering alternate designs for lower end phones and testing the waters of almost borderless design even before borderless design came into the mainstream market and became a standard, because today these kind of borders are really standard in a lot of phones. Actually, are more slimmer on some phones. However, back in the day, it was nice to see that they were experimenting with these kind of things. So in this video, we're going to give this phone the review it never got. So we're going to go over everything on this phone and we're going to review it with the camera samples, speed, tests, everything and just basically give it a review that it never got, because you can't find a full review of this thing on YouTube anywhere. Windows Central did a sort of a review a few years back when they got their hands on one of these prototypes, but this is the only video review on YouTube of this phone. Anyway, before we jump right in, please check out the link in the description below which says prototype phones. I've done a full playlist of prototype phones, so if you're into that kind of thing, you can go ahead and check out that playlist. There are a bunch of prototype phones: Motorola's, Nokia, Sony Ericsson's, Blackberries. I usually get my hands on these phones by searching online, and I just like to test them and do videos on them for you guys to see as well. So go ahead and check that list down in the description below when you're done with this video. You can also find it on my channel. And before we jump right in, as usual, don't forget to smash that like button as always, as it helps this video get on YouTube's algorithm, and it helps me know that you like to see these videos and helps me to make more of them. Also, don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below and ring the bell notification button to get notified whenever I upload a new video. I'm on Instagram, Discord, and Twitter, and you can follow me on those using the links down in the description below. And now, let's jump right into this video. Okay, so first let's start off with history. Now, there's a lot of baloney, so strap yourself in. Now, you must be saying, okay, 2014, almost borderless design. Wasn't there a phone already like that? And you'll be right. Here's the Sharp Aquos Crystal. This phone was actually released, and as you can see, it also has a almost borderless design. Its display is actually way more borderless than this thing. As you can see, the difference there, the prototype, the VELA, has more borders than this. However, this thing has a better screen to body ratio because its chin at the bottom, as you can see there, is way smaller than the Crystal's chin. And the Crystal was a huge failure. It didn't sell well, and then Sharp pulled out of the US and never sold phones in the US again on any career. I wish I could do a review on this phone, but if you've been following my channel, you know this phone is bugged with an Android error that cannot be bypassed. However, it's nice to see that companies were trying out almost borderless technology back in the day, but the biggest defects they had was obviously the chin, as you can see there. Now, let me show you this thing's back cover, because now the back cover is missing. It's over there, but the battery on this thing was a battery that was barely used in any Nokia phones. But I could not get my hands on one. It was really expensive and it's really rare. It's the BV5S. It was released in some Nokia phone that I can remember. Nokia it was an Asha phone, I think. I'll put it up on screen. I think it was released in one of those phones. But it's a really rare battery, and I did not want to pay like $40 for the thing to ship it from Germany. So the good old BL5C battery works on this, as you can see here, taped to the back of the phone. The back cover, let me grab it over here. Usually these prototypes are missing their back covers, but mine does have it. You must be like, that's very fishy. I've seen that before. That's the Lumia 532. And yes, you'll be right, the back cover is identical. The Lumia 532 takes some of its design elements from this thing. So they did use some of its design in final phones, but the 435 looks nothing like this thing. But the 435 was supposed to be this thing, but it never became. So they recycled some of the designs for the 532 and stuff like that. So it's really interesting to see that some of its design aspects were eventually used. So kind of heading back to the Crystal here, which of them would have become the true first almost borderless phone? Because we all know that the world's first almost borderless phone, I'm saying almost because of the chin, was the Sharp Aquos Crystal. Would it have been the Vela though? Would it have been the Vela? The answer is we'll never know. It could have been released before the Crystal. Now the Sharp Aquos Crystal was released around 2014 August. Yes, I remember the August release date for the Sharp Aquos Crystal. So we're not really sure when this thing would have been released. Now the 435 was eventually released in 2015. So either way, the Sharp Aquos Crystal would have beat it to the game. But we never know. That's just the case with prototype phones. We'll never know what would have happened if this released before that. Now, I got all the information from this video by either messing with this phone or the few things that I could find online about it. Windows Central's review helped a lot. And we'll be going into all of the other details and stuff as well. Back then when the Vela leaked alongside a phone called the Athena and the Libra, which we never really got to see, we just saw their names, so we don't know where those prototypes are. I may get them in the future, who knows, and nobody's really seen what they look like. When this thing was leaked, it was also called by its prototype code name, which is ID 326-3. So Nokia Lumia Vela ID 326-3, and it's also in the system settings, which I'll show you later. So now let's jump into going over all the tech specs of this phone, and we're going to see how it compares to the Lumia 435. We're going to look at the display, which is obviously important. The specs, the internal hardware, not too great, not too bad either. And the camera, stay tuned for the camera because it's a very interesting camera. It's so strange. It shoots horrible pictures, but then it also shoots amazing pictures, which is very, very interesting. So now let's jump into looking at this phone by booting it off and restarting it. And then we'll talk about the design and go on to the display. And you know the usual drill on this channel and how we review phones. So let's get to it. So first, let's power this thing on by pressing the power button over there. And you can see all the, there's a bit of a flash there because, again, prototype. Bunch of boot commands and stuff that are going over there, checks and stuff. You wouldn't see these on the final model, obviously. Diagnostics, exiting, it's got the crash dump over there, and there's an ISS launcher thing, so it's running stuff in the background. The Microsoft logo, it's not centered, probably a formatting error or something like that. And it says not for resale over here in a bit. Where is that? There we go, not for resale. We've seen that in a couple of other Lumia prototypes as well. So let's have a quick go around of this phone and talk about its design and build quality. So up front, obviously there's a gorgeous display, which we'll talk about in a bit. There's a tiny ear speaker, as you can see there, very, very tiny. And the sensors over there, they light up when the screen is on. As you can see there, there's light leaking through. It's not supposed to do that on the final model, but prototypes, they do have this. I've seen this before. So you have a bunch of sensors there. They don't really work. The proximity sensor, the motion sensors, the accelerometer, nothing works on this phone. It may be due to its prototype software, but I can't say for sure. Maybe it's broken, but nothing really works when I rotate the phone or anything like that. Either way, talk about the display in a bit. We got the mildly large chin. It's not a horrible chin. I've seen phones with way worse chins, but like I said, it's got a bigger screen to body ratio than the Sharp aqueous crystal. There's a front camera over there which we can't access with this operating system, so maybe if I load a different version of the Windows OS onto this thing, maybe I'll be able to access that, but with the current software I cannot access this camera. So for now it's just a dummy camera, but I don't want to mess with the OS because there's a lot of prototype stuff that I wouldn't find on the final version on this OS, so we can't really test out that camera. So that's the front of the phone. Moving on to the side, volume rockers and the power button. Moving on to the bottom, nothing there. This side, also nothing. And at the top, we have the port, the micro USB port, and that is micro USB. But when I saw this on the listing on eBay and online, when I saw it a few years back, I thought there was a USB-C port. But as you can see, if I bring it closer, that is micro USB. That's not USB-C. So 3.5mm headphone jack, and moving on to the back. So this is in reality the back cover. I've just taken it off. Speaker grill over here because the speaker is over there. A Nokia branding. It was still under Nokia, though the company was technically Microsoft at the time. We have a microphone cutout, we have the camera cutout and the flash cutout. Let me show you. So you have the microphone, camera, and the flash. This phone has no serial number or anything like that, so this phone is completely prototype. Some prototypes do have serial numbers, but this one has no serial number in the software either. So yeah, this one is probably an early prototype. So Nokia's prototype naming system, I really haven't figured this out, but I am assuming this means hardware revision number 2, Finland, and AV1 stands for one of their facilities, I think. And is this number 98? I can't really tell, but I'm pretty sure HW means hardware revision number 2. So this is an earlier revision of the Nokia Lumia VELA. Overall, in terms of build quality, it's just another Windows phone. It's not like the build quality isn't horrible. It isn't great either. It's not the unibody, but it's got the back cover that's falling off, and I can't really complain too much because this is a prototype. The back cover would have had a separate design in the final model, who knows, especially the latching system, but the back cover tends to fall off a lot. Feels decent in the hand. It's not too bad. It's just that old basic budget Lumia feel to it, and this phone was supposed to be a budget phone. It was supposed to be in the $200 range, as was the 435. So a decent build quality overall for a $200 phone that was to be. Now let's move on to talking about the display. So the display on this thing is obviously the main star of the show here. As you can see, it is an almost borderless display. It's got a bit of a chin up top, well, a forehead, and the borders, and this mildly sized chin at the bottom. Like I said, bigger screen to body ratio than the Sharp aqueous crystal because of the chin at the bottom, though the Sharp aqueous crystal has less borders. The aqueous crystal actually has almost no borders. The thing's dead on battery. I wish I could actually, is it dead on battery? Let me try and turn this thing on. Oh, it is not. Okay, we'll leave that for a while, and once that thing charges up, I can show you. Or when the Sprint logo shows up, hold it, there you go. So way better borders on this. As you can see, the borders are way less, but the chin then accounts for the less screen to body ratio. And as you can see, this thing is freaking out. Let's leave that to a side. Go away. Oh boy. Yeah, let me deal with this and be right back. I shouldn't have turned that thing on. And we're back, and I apologize for that. I kind of had to force it to turn off because you saw that error. It wouldn't let me turn the phone off normally. Either way, we're back to talking about this thing, and the display on this thing is a 5-inch display, so 5 inches diagonally, with a 720p resolution, so 1280 by 720 pixels, 1280 by 720, which gives it a rough pixel density of around 293 pixels per inch that I calculated using a special calculator that I found online. This thing's screen to body ratio, again, I used a calculator online, and a bit of guessing, is probably around 79.5, so about 80%. Let's say it's 80%. So an 80% screen to body ratio for a phone from around 2013, 14, 15-ish when it was being developed. It's quite impressive, honestly. This thing has a screen to body ratio. The Sharp Aqueous Crystal has a screen to body ratio of around 76% because of its big chin. So this kind of beats it out, even though it has slightly bigger bezels. And those bezels are about 3 millimeters thick on all three sides. And here it's about close to about 10 millimeters. I roughly calculated, just keeping a ruler there. But as you can see, the display on this thing is very gorgeous. Let me go ahead and turn up some different themes here. Let me quickly put, let us do the waves. So let's do waves, and let's go into the thing. As you can see, they're really gorgeous display as well. So the outdoor performance of this thing, I can't really test all the brightness ranges because the brightness is broken on this. As you can see here, the software is not allowing me to change the brightness. The brightness does not change, so it's always on high. So with respect to that, yes, the display is really, really bright, and the sunlight performance is just excellent. The display is extremely bright, so I wish I could change the brightness to see what the minimum limit is for outdoor performance, but I can't because the software doesn't allow me to. So that's a broken issue, obviously. Again, this is a prototype. And overall, honestly, I'm really impressed with this. Like I said, the brightness is very good. It's bright, it performs well outdoors. The colors are really well toned. They're not overly saturated or anything like that. Really, really good colors there. They're solid. They express very well. The ranges are great as well. And this display has a slight flickering issue. Sometimes it kind of goes away when it heats up. I don't know if that's showing up on camera, but it kind of happens at times. There you go. There you go. I think you saw that. When it kind of slows down, there you go. There's a bit of flickering, like stutter. That's probably because the display is old and it's a testing sample. But yeah, really, really nice display. I'd really love to use this even in 2021 if I could. And I might try to use this phone in the future and do a extra video on that. So stay tuned for that. Now, when I initially got this phone, I had a few doubts. I was wondering if this is a LCD display or a AMOLED display, because it will make a lot of sense for it to be AMOLED or OLED with this edge-to-edge design, because OLEDs express edge-to-edge better than LCDs ever could. But I did the low light test where I quickly locked the phone to see if the display goes off before the lights on the side, and if the display goes off and then the lights are kind of visible for a fraction of a second, that's a dead giveaway, that's an LCD. And when you go into a darker section like this, in an AMOLED, the darkness is pure dark. It's not grayish like this. In an LCD, the blacks are actually slightly grayish, and as you can see, it's slightly grayish, and you can vaguely see the light leaking in from the sides there. It's a fraction of a second, but I confirm this to be an LCD because OLEDs and AMOLEDs give out their own light. They don't need LEDs to light them up from the side. This is also a IPS LCD panel. I think the Windows Central called this thing a TFT panel, but I cannot find any evidence to say this is a TFT. This is an IPS LCD panel. It's got all the 16 million colors. So 720p IPS LCD panel with the full 16 million color complement. I've looked at a lot of photos onto this thing, the ones on this thing, the photos that I took and some of the sample photos. This is not a TFT LCD. This is an IPS LCD. I've had a lot of phones with TFTs, IPs, AMOLEDs, OLEDs, whatever. This thing is an IPS LCD display, I can say for 100% certainty. And for a $200 phone, I'm assuming that the display was one of the main issues that they couldn't release this phone for just $200 is because the display was just too good for $200, and they just eventually released the crappy display on the 435. But then again, we'll probably never know what really happened because this is a prototype until someone meets a Microsoft or Nokia employee and asks them that directly, like, hey, why wasn't this thing released? And I hope to do that someday, so stay tuned for that. Anyway, let's move on to the rest of this phone. We've been blabbering about the display for a bit long here, but then again, that is the main focus of this phone. Anyway, let's move on to the hardware and the software. So looking under the hood of this thing, we can see that this and the final 435 use actually the same processor, which is the Qualcomm Snapdragon 200, which is a dual-core processor clocked in at 1.2 gigahertz on both its cores. And now you may be thinking, oh, that's a crap processor, it's low end, it's horrible. But remember, like I've said earlier in my videos, This is Windows Phone. It does not need a powerful processor. This thing is snappy as all hell, and this thing's a prototype. It's running prototype software. It's got a lot of bloat, a lot of testing software, and we'll go over the software in the next section. So it does not need a powerful processor. Windows Phone barely uses any RAM or any power for that matter. As a matter of fact, a lot of Windows phones were overpowered for their operating system. It's something that a lot of people don't know. So yeah, the Snapdragon 200 dual-core 1.2 gigahertz is just perfect for the job. It's just a basic processor, but it does get the job done. This thing obviously has a few differences from the final 435. The 435 had a Adreno 302 as its graphics processor, and I can say with some certainty this thing also probably has an Adreno 302, but I cannot confirm. Maybe, maybe not. I have no way to honestly check that, but it may have an Adreno 302 as its processor. Furthermore, the differences go where the internal storage of this is 4 gigs, but the user can only use 2.8 gigs. But then again, this is a prototype. It would have been different on the final model. But the 435 has 8 gigs of internal storage as well. They both also share the single gig of RAM. So 1 gig of RAM on the 435 and 1 gig of RAM on this thing as well. This thing also has a micro SD expansion slot. Upgradable to probably around 64 to 120 gigs. The Windows Central review said it was expandable to 200 gigs. I can't confirm that they're right. I don't know if they even tested it, but you know what? We'll actually take their word for it, because I'm pretty sure they tried shoving the biggest cards they could into this, and the 200 gig card worked on this. But 200 gigs is a weird storage option. It's either 256 gig or 128. So maybe the software was limiting it. So it's probably 256 gig. Probably, but we'll never know. I don't have a 256 gig card here. So let's take Windows Central's review as a fact there for now, because I'm pretty sure they shoved the biggest card they could find, and a 200 gig card probably worked. I don't know where they got 200 gigs from. I don't know how they got that number, because there are no 200 gig cards as far as I can tell. But hey, we can never know. Anyway, that's as far as I can go for internal specs. And there, like I said, there are some similarities between the 435 and this thing, the Qualcomm Snapdragon 200, and the other internal specs as well, except the storage. And I think I put on screen earlier, because I forgot to say what version of the Qualcomm Snapdragon 200 was this. So it was Qualcomm Snapdragon MSN 8210. So Qualcomm Snapdragon MSM 8210, which was the variant, but maybe this thing had a different variant. Again, I can't really tell. Who knows? But either way, now let's go on to talking about the software on this thing. So in terms of software, this thing is running Windows Phone 8.1 Lumia Black Edition, which is an update that 8.1 got with a bunch of other features. And this is a prototype version of that operating system as well. Let me go into the other about section over here. There's a bunch of information there, so I don't want to show that. And there's phone information here, the basics. We have the software Windows Phone 8.1 update. As you can see, then I told you it's called the Nokia ID 326-3. So that is its model number in terms of prototype stage. So Nokia VELA ID 326-3. VELA is the project name, Project VELA, but that's a name they drop eventually. Now the operating system on this thing is very interesting. There's a lot of testing software that I've never seen. Probably Microsoft use these things. I don't know where this phone is made in. It's probably China, but I'm not really sure. There's a bunch of software. So we have system info, which does not really give me much info. Now we can view running processors. We have a bunch of processors. It's kind of like a task manager on the computer. But when I said it doesn't give me much info, I meant when I click system info, I usually would expect to show you to see the hardware info, but I don't see hardware info anywhere here. If I go to MISC details, it just gives me a bunch of frequencies and tick counts and physical memory calculations and stuff like that. This is the manufacturing date of this phone. So it's a bit, it could be wrong, honestly, built September 10th, 2014. But then again, this may be the software update. Maybe this phone had a different version of 8.1 that was updated, because if I'm correct, this is revision 2 and this will be late 2013, not 2014. So, but I can't say for sure. So we have data numbers over there. So there's nothing in terms of hardware and stuff on this thing, which is weird. So let's go back to running processors. We have all the the back running processors that you wouldn't even usually see on a Windows phone. As you can see here, CPU usage, memory usage, that doesn't really work, and a bunch of processors. So that's interesting. We're going to look at all these prototype software. So it's going to take a while. There's some nonsense as well, and some softwares completely crash the phone, so I'm not going to load them up. Z-Power, it really doesn't do much. There's a trace and some processes. Maybe I just don't know how to use it. We have show temperatures, the thermal zones and stuff. That sometimes works, sometimes crashes the phone, as you can see there. It is crashed and, oh, it worked now. Okay, let's do that again. Let's give it some time. It does crash sometime. Come on. Come on, there you go. So these are some temperature values, thermal zone temperatures. These come in different numbers, so those are not really temperatures. But there was this benchmark software. Where'd that thing go? There you go, thermal stress app. There's a benchmark software called thermal stress app, and these are all prototype software. We can boost the CPU. Let's go ahead and boost the CPU. This works because these numbers start going, as you can see there. I don't know really what those numbers mean. They're definitely not like Celsius or something. It's not 200 Celsius, obviously. But yeah, that's quite cool to see. You can turn it off. Front camera doesn't do anything because this phone doesn't know it has a front camera. That's kind of evident in the software, which I'll show you earlier in the camera software. So a bunch of things you can test out in terms of thermal stress. We have battery info. It's telling me the battery info of this battery, but whichever battery I put it into, it always says 64%. It could be wrong. Sometimes it does drop. Sometimes it's just stuck at 64%. It says it's a BL5J, but in reality it's a BL5C. But the BL5J and the BL5C are identical batteries, so this is somewhat right actually. The full charge capacity is wrong. That is not the capacity of this battery. It says capacity 3,392. This is around 1,500 milliamp hour battery. This is not correct. So there's some info that's wrong there. So that's one of the softwares. We have ZHDR, Microsoft HDR. That doesn't really work. As you see, it crashes. As this ZNode center, that thing crashes the phone. The proximity sensors, here we go. Like I said, the proximity sensors on this phone are not working. There's no values coming there. Let's clear log and run test. Come on, run the test. Yeah, the sensors aren't working. So yeah, that's one of the issues I saw. The proximity sensors and the accelerometer aren't working on this phone. There's another app that showed me, oh, is it sensor view? I think it was, oh, here we go. Yeah, so compass, get sample, doesn't work. And if you turn, as you can see here, the compass is not doing anything. So the compass doesn't work. The proximity sensor, let's see if that does anything. No, let's do that. It says object not detected, and I cover my hand. It still says object not detected. So yeah, proximity sensor doesn't work. It may be that the sensor works, but the software can't really work the sensors. I'm kind of thinking that's the same thing with the camera. There are all sensors on this phone. All the sensors can't break at the same time. That's just, yeah, that's probably not the case. What I'm guessing is that the software just can't give proper values. Now, the ambient light sensor somewhat works. As you see there, the values are going up and down. But when I cover this, it should go to 0. But I don't know. I'm probably a bit wrong there. See, I can get sample for that, but that could be wrong because that should go to 0 when I cover my hand there. Everything else also doesn't really work properly, but probably I'm going to put that down to the software being prototype. and not being able to detect all the sensors on this thing. Now there's a bunch of other softwares. We're not going to go into all of these. This iPerf thing as well. Remember, this thing crashed the phone the last time. It's another testing software. I'm not really sure what it does, but it's probably, like it says, TCP test. There's a dump as well. We have an IP dump. That thing is there as well. So there's a bunch of stuff that I've never seen before. So it's quite interesting to say the least. We can go into diagnostics as well. It's another software. It basically shows you the memory dump and all the tests and stuff for cameras and stuff. As you can see here, we have the camera test placeholder for open, close test, start, and it crashes. There you go. It's probably trying to test the front camera, and the front camera is not there. So a bunch of features there, as you can see, prototype testing features that are usually not found on the final model. Apart from that, it's just Windows operating system, your standard Windows 8.1 with the background and the tiles and all that stuff. We can change the gorgeous background over there to whatever photos you like with the teal, with the settings over here. We have color changing, obviously not many colors as Windows Phone 10, but we have a bunch of colors as well. We can choose different photos, change the photos a bit. Let's put the thingy over here. We can change that. One of the best features of the Windows operating system that I like. This thing has the ability to hide that as well. If you want to watch a movie or something, you can hide it or bring it back up. In terms of other features, it does have tap to wake here in the software, but the tap to wake isn't working. So I'm not sure if the software is just assuming this thing has tap to wake, or this thing has tap to wake and the software can't recognize it. So double tap the screen, nothing works there, so that feature doesn't work. I can't say whether this thing has double tap or that's just the software messing around. Navigation bar, we can do that. We can change the vibration when using the navigation bar as well. So I'm not going to go into detail for the rest of the software because it's just Windows Phone 8.1. It is prototype, hence why it has all these other softwares. I'm not going to delete them because it's nice to see them. I'm not going to go over all of these. Most of these do crash the phone, but still, it's really nice to see the operating system on this phone, Windows Phone 8.1. This is the longest time I've ever reviewed an operating system, almost 10 minutes just for the operating system. But yeah, that was the operating system for the Nokia Lumia VELA. It's a prototype version of Windows 8.1 Black. Now, moving on to the ever important camera, because this is a Lumia phone, it's a Nokia phone. They were known for their cameras, and this thing's camera is weird to say the least. It shoots amazing photos during the day, and they're actually good at night as well. But some photos, in some situations, they look like crap, where they're not supposed to look like crap, but some photos are just downright amazing. I don't understand this camera. Either way, it's a 5 megapixel shooter with a single LED flash, as you can see there. The LED has those rings across it. Those rings are the reflectors to make the flash look bigger and more brighter. We have a microphone as well for video recording. So 5 megapixel shooter. It is a autofocus camera as well. It can record video at wide VGA. So wide VGA is 480p. With a different variation in the first resolution. So I'll put the actual resolution over here. So WVGA, meaning wide VGA 480p. But the first extension of the resolution, the width, is actually going to vary, and I can't really remember what it is on this phone, so I'll put it over there. But it's 480p wide VGA, wide video graphics array. So wide VGA 480p. The front camera, like I said, this phone cannot access its front camera. It doesn't know it has a front camera, and that was the same on the Windows Central review, so I can't really demo that. But looking at it, I can assume it's just a simple VGA camera. This is a budget phone. Anyway, let's go into the camera interface here, and there's nothing much in the way of the camera interface because this is a prototype. It's very basic. We have some scenes here, and we have night, auto, which is the default, and sports and backlight as well. We have some settings here, which are basic, quick settings. We have photo settings, take photo for tap, auto, ISO. We have a few settings. I'm pretty sure the final model would have had more settings, but like the 435, obviously it had more settings. But this is what we get for, that's for photo settings. For video settings, so we have FWVGA. It's actually wide VGA, but they call it FWVGA because of the resolution varies, but it's still 480p, and you saw the resolution up there earlier as well. So all the samples that I'll be putting will be on wide VGA on auto as well, and the daytime photos will be on night mode as well. So we'll be putting it on night mode, as you can see there. For for video, as you can see here, there is night mode as well, which does help quite a lot. The frames drop a bit, but it does help a lot in terms of exposure. I'll be putting the frames per second on the video as well. It's kind of hard to judge from this display because this display has a slight flickering issue while watching videos, because again, it's a prototype. And we also have some more lenses here, but we really can't use any other lenses because they're not installed. Like I said earlier in a card above, the Wi-Fi does not work on this thing, so I can't really download anything onto this. And I'm pretty sure it's not going to work. The store is not going to log in. Released 8.1 phones, the stores don't work, so let alone this thing is definitely not going to work. We have night mode as well over here. Photos and video settings, as I show you there. We have pretty basic stuff, so we can switch between these as well. Video, photo on burst mode, and photo over here as well. We have the gallery up here, and we have some basically when you go here you can change the ratio on the photo. I'm gonna stick to 16:9 as well on the final photo, so 16:9 ratio, FWVGA, and I'll be putting the resolution and the frames per second as well. Night photos will be taken with night mode. Daytime photos will be taken with the auto mode included. There's no HDR mode in this thing, so there's no HDR. Now, as you will see with the upcoming camera samples, they're really strange because some photos are really underexposed, some of them are overexposed, but most of the time they are really natural. And that's strange for a 5 megapixel budget camera, because usually a low-end 5 megapixel budget camera like this would take really highly processed photos because it's not really that good. The camera isn't great. Now this camera is no Carl's eye sensor stuff, anything like that, so we know that. But this thing does shoot some amazing photos given the right sunlight angles, given the right conditions. If the sunlight is focusing at a certain angle on the subject, this will take some amazing photos, as you can see. And nighttime photography on the night mode, you'd expect it to be almost invisible, but this thing can absorb so much light. And I'll be talking over one particular photo of my Xbox controller where this thing actually took a photo in almost pitch black and got most of the details of, well, all the details actually, of the Xbox controller, which is strange. This thing takes amazing night photography for a cheap 5 megapixel camera. Now, with respect to the price and what the camera is, obviously I'm talking with respect to that. There are phones that obviously can take better photos, but for a cheap sub $200 5 megapixel camera, this takes some amazing nighttime photos. It gets the details. At this price range, you're not looking for a photo shoot's level of detail. You're just looking for the image to be visible, and this phone does that exactly well. It does it perfectly well, which is quite strange for a budget phone. I'm really confused on this camera. And the Lumia 435 had a crappy 2 megapixel camera that was absolute crap. This thing's camera easily kicks butt against the Lumia 435's camera. So the Lumia 435 had a downgraded camera, probably due to pricing. Again, they had to release it at a sub $200 price. So this thing has easily a superior camera to the Lumia 435. So we'll look over the photos and I'll talk over that single photo on the Xbox controller, and you'll get a better picture of what I'm talking about. The camera is really strange on this thing. So now let's roll the camera samples. So as you can see with this photo, the Xbox controller is in a pitch dark room. There's barely any light. But this thing with its night mode turned on is capable of getting the shape, some colors, and it's clearly visible as an Xbox controller. You're not going to get this on any other budget camera at this price range. So that's very, very strange. So that I was just blown away at this photo because there are very much higher end phones that I've seen that I own that could not take this photo and just blurt it out even on night mode. But this thing managed to take this photo, so big thumbs up there. So as you saw with the photos, some of them are horrible, but most of them are really, really nice. And the nighttime photos I already explained. I'm not going to talk over it more. They're really, really nice. They expose well, and that Xbox controller photo, I don't know what's going on here. And this is a prototype camera, and it's running prototype software. It can't even detect its front camera. Imagine the final version if this phone was released. Imagine what a great budget camera that could have been. This 5 megapixel shooter. Just imagine, for sub $200, if they were able to do it, it would have been easily the best sub $200 5 megapixel camera or camera overall in that price range at the time in 2014 or 15. So yeah, big thumbs up on the camera. I will probably do a bit more in detailed review of this in the future, and then we're gonna go into even further depth on the camera when I use this phone for like a week as my main phone. But that's going to be very hard because this thing can't connect to Wi-Fi, and the SIM card slots also probably don't work. So we'll have to check that out later. Anyway, let's jump on to the next section. So let us now demo the single firing mono speaker at the back end. It's quite a loud speaker as well. It's not amazing, but it's not horrible either. So let's max out the volume there and play some ringtones, because obviously I can't play music because copyright. So that again. Where's the Nokia ringtone? Oh, there we go. Classic. That's not the Nokia ringtone. Come on, you gotta have the Nokia ringtone. Where is it? Oh, Windows Phone ringtones. Okay, it's Windows Phone ringtones. There's no Nokia ringtones on this thing. Kind of a bummer. Let's play a bit more. Lattice is actually a very common ringtone for Windows Phone. This one. It was used for the notifications as well, that same identical sound. Let's do one more, two-step. So yeah, pretty loud speaker and pretty decent. Well, it sounds pretty nice. It's not tinny, it's not crackly. But then again, it's a ringtone, so it's perfectly made for the phone. I don't know how the music will go on this thing, but I can't play music. But yeah, nevertheless, that was the speaker demo. Now, the battery on this thing, as you can see here, is obviously not supposed to be this battery. This is the BL5C, which is about 1,200 milliamp hours or 1,500, I kind of forgot. But nevertheless, the battery that's supposed to be in this phone is a really, really rare battery that was used for very few Nokia phones, like Asha phones and stuff. I can't really remember. But it's not available in the US. It's only available in Lithuania, Germany and stuff. And shipping it to the US would cost me about $40 to $50, which is not worth it. I'm not going to bother. So this works. The BL5C works just fine. I just have to stick it like that. The battery that's supposed to be in this thing, like I said, very rare. It's called the BV5S, and here's a photo of it. So the Nokia BV5S battery, 1,800 milliamp hours, 3.8 volts, 6.8 watt hours. So BV5S, 1,800 milliamp hour capacity, 3.8 volts and 6.8 watt hours. Now, with my decently professional experience with Windows Phone and operating systems and the hardware, the RAM, everything as a whole, when I analyze this phone, I can give it a rough estimate. This is rough again. This is my estimate. Rough estimate with that battery, the 1,800 milliamp hour battery. Standby time of around 350 to 400 hours. A talk time on 2G of about 9 hours. A talk time of 7 hours probably on 3G, about roughly that, and about 20 to 30 hours maybe of music playback depending on how loud you're playing the music. So about 7 hours of talk time on 3G, 9 hours on 2G, standby of around 350 to 400 hours. That's based on my personal basically just guesses. There's iCloud for some reason. You can log in. I don't know why that. How did that even pop up? Oh, my hand was touching it. But yeah, that was the battery. Just assumptions. I'm assuming. Okay, I'm just assuming. 7 hours on 2G, 9 hours on 3G talk time, and 350 hours of standby as well. So that was the battery and power. In terms of additional softwares, like I mentioned, it has tap to wake and stuff. I'm not sure if the tap to wake even exists on this phone or it's just the software. Again, at the end of the day, this is a prototype. This phone is very, very unpolished. This thing has no IMEI number. To begin with, you saw the software in the about section. There was no IMEI number, and I've checked all over this phone. Even in the about section, I view mode, there's some MAC addresses and stuff. Don't want to be showing that, but there's no IMEI number there. So this thing is a very, very early model. The update that said in one of those prototype softwares over there, the testing software, the update said late 2014. I don't think that's correct, because a hardware revision 2 wouldn't be in late 2014. That's way too early, nearing the 2015 release date. So maybe this got an update at the Nokia testing facility, and that's actually the update date and not the manufacture date. Manufacture date of this thing is probably late 2013 from my somewhat professional experience based on working with a lot of prototype phones. In terms of other additional features, there's nothing much. I mean, this was supposed to be a sub $200 budget phone, but the display probably set back the company some money, and they thought, you know what, let's not go ahead with this display. Sharp they probably actually looked at Sharp's failure, the failure of this phone, and they thought, you know what, people are probably not going to give a damn. They're still going to go for Samsung. Samsung and Apple, they're not going to give a damn about this this display. And this was a time where Windows Phone was actually on a downward spiral, going down and getting less popular. Android was getting more popular, iOS was also somewhat getting more popular, and Windows Phone was losing a lot of customers to iOS and Android. So yeah, I guess they must have just thought, you know what, forget it, let's not release this thing. Additional softwares, additional features, like I said, again, there's nothing much. Budget phone, not supposed to have too many additional features, but the display, like I said, it's a gorgeous display. I honestly wish the 435 had this display, but they didn't, obviously probably due to pricing reasons. Apart from that, that's all I can pull out of this phone. There's nothing else in terms of prototype features that I can find. I honestly hope you enjoyed this video as usual, and if you did, please leave a big thumbs up and check out the prototype playlist down in the description below. We've come to the end of this video, and if you honestly like this video, like it by hitting the like button down below, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification button, check out my social media down in the description below, and stay tuned for all the upcoming prototype videos. I've got a pile of Motorola prototypes that I gotta cover, so we'll be covering those in the upcoming weeks, including 2 unreleased ones. Here's a sneak peek. This thing's not even a phone, I don't know what it is, so that's a sneak peek. And stay tuned for the upcoming videos. As usual, big thumbs up, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video.